Adiós, congelador.
¡Venga, maestro!
nossas plantas medicinais, nossa cura sendo devastado. Nós queremos viver na nossa terra em paz, nós queremos viver na nossa terra livres, como nós sempre vivemos.
A horas de su asunción, el 2 de enero, el mandatario trasladó toda la problemática vinculada al reclamo de tierras indígenas al Ministerio de Agricultura. Desde enero hasta hoy, el gobierno dio licencia para que aterricen 262 nuevos pesticidas. Al mismo tiempo, Bolsonaro atacó al Fondo Amazonía, creado durante la época de Lula para promover políticas de protección a esta región, y recortó el presupuesto del FUNAI, encargado de la atención a la población indígena. Organizaciones ecologistas calculan que en los últimos 50 años, 20% de la Amazonía ha sido destruido, proceso que se ha acelerado con la llegada de Bolsonaro, decidido a abrir la región a empresas privadas en minería, turismo y agricultura, especialmente soja y palma.
Es brennt immer in den Monaten von August bis Ende Oktober. Das ist in Amazonien die Trockenzeit. Da werden die Brände gelegt. Man muss wissen, dass es keine natürlichen Feuer gibt in Amazonien. Also Selbstentzündungen, wie es sie in anderen Wäldern, in anderen Regionen der Welt gibt, sind in Amazonien nicht möglich. Die Brände sind eigentlich nur Ausdruck eines tiefergehenden Problems. Das ist nämlich das Landgrabbing. Also Farmer besetzen dort Land, meist illegal. Dann gehen sie dorthin mit großen Traktoren, mit riesigen Eisenketten und roden erstmal die Bäume, lassen die dann dort monatelang liegen oder ein paar Wochen liegen, bis das erstmal angetrocknet ist und dann legen sie Feuer. Das geht eben in der Trockenzeit besser und anschließend wird das abgebrannte Land verseucht mit Grassamen und dann werden die Rinder draufgetrieben. Die Endabnehmer profitieren natürlich davon, weil es dadurch mehr Rindfleisch gibt, was auf den Markt kommt. Woher das kommt, ist schwer zu kontrollieren am Ende. Das geht häufig oder zum großen Teil in den Export und eben auch sehr viel nach Deutschland und nach Europa im Allgemeinen. Das ist sehr, sehr häufig illegal. Immer mehr finden diese Rodungen und diese Brände statt in Schutzgebieten, die bisher weitgehend verschont geblieben waren. Ja, also das, was legal bewirtschaftet werden konnte, das hat man jahrzehntelang ausgenutzt. Bolsonaro hat schon vor Amtsantritt die Farmer geradezu ermutigt, Schutzgebiete zu verletzen und da reinzugehen. Er hat gesagt, das sind alles sozusagen nicht gehobene Schätze. Amazonien muss erschlossen werden. Also der Umweltminister Ricardo Salles ist ein Mann der Agrolobby. Der hat überhaupt kein Interesse daran, die Umwelt zu schützen. Der hat ein ausschließliches Interesse daran, die Farmer mit zusätzlichen Einkommen zu versorgen, sozusagen. Bolsonaro will sich der Indigenen entledigen. Das hat er ziemlich deutlich auch vielfach gesagt, auch schon im Wahlkampf. Bolsonaro, ja, man muss das so klar sagen, er hasst die Indigenen. Sie sind ihm in seinen Augen ein Hindernis für den Fortschritt. Und sein Fortschrittsbild ist halt ein sehr koloniales. Das heißt, Bodenschätze ausbeuten und Holz verkaufen und Rinder drauf und dann verdienen alle gutes Geld. Die Indigenen stehen unter enormem Druck. Sie werden angegriffen, sie werden erschossen, sie werden vertrieben. Neben den Bränden hat man natürlich auch das Problem jetzt wieder der Goldschürfer, die auch regelrecht ermuntert werden, in indigene Schutzgebiete vorzudringen und dort nach Gold zu schürfen. Das ist die nächste Katastrophe. Da wird dann wieder ganz viel Quecksilber produziert, was dann die Bevölkerung vergiftet, weil man es nicht abbauen kann. Das ist eine Katastrophe mit Ansage. Der Feuerring, der schließt sich ja von Süden her immer weiter um Amazonien rum. Erst holt man das Holz raus, dann brennt man das, was übrig ist, ab. Dann kommen die Rinder. Und wenn also das Gras für die Rinder sozusagen nicht mehr wächst, dann kommt das Soja hinterher mit sehr viel Chemie, häufig aus deutscher Produktion. Bayer macht wunderbare Geschäfte in Brasilien. Monsanto war schon immer ganz groß dort. Und ja, und dann kommt das Soja und das Soja, das wird dann unter anderem in die EU exportiert. Innerhalb der EU sind wir Deutschen größter Einzelabnehmer für brasilianisches Soja, was fast immer genmanipuliertes Soja ist. Und das landet dann in deutschen Schweinemägen und deutschen Rindermägen. Deshalb ist es auch so wichtig, dass der Vertrag zwischen der EU und dem Mercosur so in dieser Form nicht unterzeichnet wird. Ich hoffe, dass auch die Bundesregierung darauf reagiert, denn schließlich sind wir in Deutschland diejenigen, die am meisten von diesem Soja importieren. Im Grunde müssten die Brasilianer ein Impeachment für Bolsonaro in die Wege leiten. Der Mann agiert permanent gegen Recht und Gesetz und die Verfassung.
Não destruição, né? Isso é que nós desejamos mais aqui. Essas aves, tudo elas tinham vida. E nós, o nosso esforço é de proteger. Se for preciso, essa floresta, eu poderia derramar até a minha última gota de sangue.
Bolsonaro entregó a los estados imperialistas una oportunidad de oro, la oportunidad para volver a poner sobre la mesa el tema de la internacionalización de la Amazonía. Los crímenes ambientales, los atropellos ambientales contra los indígenas, en favor del agronegocio, en favor de la industria extractivista, todos esos crímenes que Bolsonaro está cometiendo en la Amazonía, abrió las puertas para este tipo de oportunismo de Macron. Hay que tener ojo sobre la actitud de Francia y de otros estados imperialistas, que claro, se aprovechan. Francia, Alemania o Finlandia o Irlanda no inventaron el pretexto les fue fornecido, les fue presentado por la política que conduce Bolsonaro en relación a la Amazonía. Acusan el tema medioambiental, pero nosotros todos sabemos que por detrás de esas acusaciones está siempre un objetivo de internacionalización, de poner bajo su control directo o indirecto la Amazonía latinoamericana.
Bereits mit 15 Jahren gehörte der junge Joshua Wong zu einer Gruppe von Schüleraktivisten, die in Hongkong gegen die Beeinflussung der Lehrpläne durch die chinesische Regierung demonstrierten. 2 Jahre später, im Jahre 2014, wurde Wong Symbol der aufkeimenden lokalen Protestbewegung, die bei den Umbrella-Protesten gegen den chinesischen Einfluss demonstrierten. Vor allem westliche Medien machten den schüchtern aussehenden 17-Jährigen zum Gesicht der Protestbewegung. Spätestens 2015 begann die Karriere des westlichen Einflussagenten Wong. Nachdem Wong vom Time Magazine zum einflussreichsten Teenager des Jahres 2014 ernannt wurde, wurde Wong nun auch offiziell in Washington und den mit der US-Regierung assoziierten Thinktanks und Vorfeldorganisationen herumgereicht. Im Jahr nach den Protesten traf er unter anderem die Sprecherin des Repräsentantenhauses Nancy Pelosi, den Falken Tom Cotton und erstmals auch eine besondere Person, bei der er offenbar seitdem ein- und ausgeht. den republikanischen Senator und Präsidentschaftskandidaten Marco Rubio. Rubio ist kein Unbekannter. Er ist ein bekennender Anhänger der neokonservativen Falken und war schon der Strippenzieher beim gescheiterten Putsch in Venezuela. Im November 2016 warnte bereits die ganz sicher nicht als Peking nahe geltende South China Morning Post vor der Vereinnahmung Wongs durch die ultrakonservativen Eliten der USA und insbesondere vor Wongs Verbindung zu Rubio. Wong ist also beileibe kein unbeschriebenes Blatt und genau die Sorte Freiheitskämpfer, die in den transatlantischen Kreisen des Wertewestens so beliebt ist.
The Hong Kong rioters have gone so far as to produce and disseminate a veritable urban warfare manual describing in detail the division of labour between the close combat fighters, ranged weapon fighters, as well as various support roles. Their plan A appears to be, as cynical as this may sound, to provoke bloodshed by inducing local law enforcement to use firearms against the rioters. The rioters' awareness of their foreign audience was made plain by the displays of US flags, as well as the flags associated with Hong Kong's British colonial past. From the US perspective, crippling Hong Kong economically would inflict serious damage on China's economy and also badly dent its political image. Further complicating matters for Beijing is the Western powers, and principally the US, its interest in using Hong Kong as an instrument in the gradually escalating confrontation between East and West. Entirely unsurprisingly, Western governments and media wholeheartedly endorsed the protests while turning a blind eye to the increasing violence perpetrated by Hong Kong's urban warriors. It's not difficult to predict what kind of Western reaction would follow. Sanctions on Hong Kong officials, financial institutions, perhaps even on top Chinese leadership. It's evident that the Trump administration is raring for a pretext to break as many ties between the United States and China as possible, and also to force third countries, most notably the states of the European Union, to choose continued economic integration with the United States or with China, but not with both.
Hier sieht man, wer Joshua Wong und alle diese Demonstranten wirklich sind. Wenn sie US-Flaggen tragen oder britische Flaggen, koloniale Flaggen. Sie wollen eine Intervention der Vereinigten Staaten gegen China, nicht nur in Hongkong. Sie wollen Gesetze, die zu einem Handelskrieg gegen China beitragen, und sie wollen einen harten Handelskrieg. Sie sind da die echten Fürsprecher. Ich denke, es handelt sich nicht um eine legitime Bewegung, denn sie sind extrem gut finanziert und auch organisiert und sie stehen nicht hinter den wirklichen Bedürfnissen der Menschen in Hongkong für eine Zukunft und für ein besseres Leben. Stattdessen wollen sie Hass erzeugen.
The United States has a strong military presence in the Persian Gulf. They have many naval ships. They have many bases. Western countries have bases. So it's very difficult to imagine that a host of Iranian missiles and drones flew over the Persian Gulf and then struck targets in Saudi Arabia without detection. Saudi Arabia has spent hundreds of billions of dollars on their military, and it's been focused on Iran. So all of their installations are alongside the Persian Gulf region and directed towards any potential so-called Iranian threat. So how could such a thing be that the Iranians would carry out such a massive strike, yet no one in the American or Saudi military is able to detect it?
Haben die jemenitischen Rebellen ein Interesse daran, das zu tun? Hätten die durchaus, könnte man denen zutrauen. Haben sie die technischen Möglichkeiten, das so zu machen? Mehr als fragwürdig. Noch dazu, wenn die Amerikaner und Saudis das tun, was ihre Aufgabe wäre, nämlich den Luftraum zu überwachen, was sie natürlich auch tun. Wie sieht es mit dem Iran aus? Hat der ein Interesse daran? Nun, zornig sind die allemal, aber sind die so wahnsinnig, jetzt zu sagen, hey, bitte greift uns an, attackiert uns, führt einen Krieg gegen uns? Und zwar möglichst, solange wir noch nicht so weit hochgerüstet sind, was die Kerntechnologie angeht. Nicht so sehr wahrscheinlich. Bleibt die Frage, ja, wer kann es denn sonst noch gewesen sein? Die Frage müssen wir uns stellen, beantworten kann ich sie Ihnen auch nicht. Wenn es zu einem Ölkrieg kommt zwischen Iran und Saudi-Arabien, möglicherweise mit einer Schließung der Straße von Hormuz, dann sehen wir dreistellige Ölpreise. Dann lohnt sich auch amerikanisches Frackingöl. Dann lohnt sich das auch für alle, die außerhalb dieser Straße von Hormuz sind, ihr Öl loszuwerden. Also, das wirft mehr Fragen auf als Antworten, würde ich sagen.
The United States is pursuing its own interests, and that is to control the flow of oil to the world. That means providing oil to its friends and denying oil to its enemies. We've seen the United States embargo oil to countries like Syria, the sale of oil from Iran, Sudan, Libya, many other places. This is about the United States' control over the most important commodity in the world. Oil is not just a product. It is leverage over the international community. It's geostrategically important. Ever since World War II, the United States has wanted to control energy in the world. So the United States is very loath to leave the Gulf, even though it doesn't actually need the oil itself.
Votar en Navidad y acompañado del Belén, hecho. Hacer campaña en Semana Santa y al volver de vacaciones, ir a votar también. Por si quieren pruebas de que lo poco agrada y lo mucho enfada, es qué opina la calle ante otras elecciones.
Venga, por Dios, por Dios, los políticos.
Pues sí, otra campaña se acerca y aunque la tragedia va por barrios, menos mal que con humor en las redes. Que los españoles gritan ante el desastre está claro.
Rozamos el ridículo.
Elecciones en noviembre, elecciones en noviembre.
¿Qué? ¿Otra vez? ¡Qué estúpido país!
España necesita estabilidad, moderación y un gobierno progresista. Eso...
En fin, no se lo tomen tan a pecho, respiren, cuenten hasta 10.
Para todo el pueblo español, elecciones.
Que un político conocido internacionalmente se tome fotos con paramilitares armados en una zona con amplia presencia del narcotráfico sería un escándalo en todos los grandes medios del mundo. A menos, por supuesto, que ese político se llame Juan Guaidó y entonces mágicamente pasa a no ser escándalo en ninguno. Estas son las fotos, así es como las interpretaron los medios. Estas son las fotos, así es como las interpretaron los medios. Las incómodas fotos, las polémicas instantáneas, las controversiales imágenes. Nada de indignantes, escandalosas o por lo menos perturbadoras aunque sea. Nada, todo normal, comprensible, justificable. Los intentos de algunos por ocultar ciertos detalles reveladores, como por ejemplo la pistola que llevaba uno de los paramilitares en su cinturón, requirieron meterle zoom y recorte a las fotos, aunque fuera a costa de que salieran más pixeladas que un mosaico romano. Tranquilo, presidente. Usted siga así, sacándose fotos con todo el mundo, que algún buen recuerdo tendrá que quedarle para cuando concluya su presidencia imaginaria.
Suicide is very, very common in prison, but this particular facility has only had one suicide over the past 40 years. The other question that's come up is, where were the cameras? Why wasn't he being observed? I can tell you that someone that's supposedly been on suicide watch, no psychiatrist would take a person off of suicide watch in this kind of condition. I have never seen that in all my years of practice. It doesn't happen. This is almost unbelievable that this occurred. Medically, it's inexcusable.
Attending exclusive parties, buying private islands, and living in lavish overseas mansions. This was the life of Jeffrey Epstein in the late 90s. Epstein once described himself as a collector of famous friends. Donald Trump reportedly attended several of those parties. This video shows them together at Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort in 1992. Trump told a New York Magazine journalist Epstein was a terrific guy, that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side. But he gave a less glowing appraisal just last month.
I was not a fan of Jeffrey Epstein. I didn't want anything to do with him. That was many, many years ago.
A previous US president appears to have had a closer connection. Epstein attended several fundraising dinners for Bill Clinton. A Washington Post examination of flight logs revealed Bill Clinton took 27 flights on Epstein's private plane. While making millions and mingling with the powerful, Jeffrey Epstein was also preying on the vulnerable. His depraved activities, confirmed and alleged, first came to light in 2008 in Florida. Investigators identified at least 40 alleged victims, among them Virginia Roberts Giuffre. Mrs. Giuffre claims she was lent out to prominent figures, including the man pictured with his hand on her 17-year-old waist in 2001.
Prince Andrew, the Queen's second son,
had a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein which spanned decades. Prince Andrew later said he stayed at Epstein's homes several times, and flight records show the prince travelled on Epstein's private plane in 1999. In 2008, Epstein was behind bars, convicted for soliciting sex with a minor, but given a dubiously lenient sentence of just 18 months. Soon after he was released and had returned to New York, he was snapped, strolling through Central Park with Prince Andrew.
Now that's extraordinary that somebody who is a Prince of England would go and meet with somebody who has these convictions. Why did he go and meet with Mr. Epstein after he had been convicted, after he had been to jail, after the world had known what was going on inside Mr. Epstein's home?
What really happened at Epstein's Island? There's one person who knows all those answers. Her name is Ghislaine Maxwell. Known for her role as Epstein's sidekick and procurer for his underage sex trafficking and blackmail operation. Her father, Robert Maxwell, was a British media magnate with ties to intelligence agencies such as Mossad and MI6. Ghislaine moved to New York City and promptly became a fixture among Manhattan high society. The number of celebrities, business moguls, and world leaders this woman has been photographed with is troubling to say the least. Epstein financed her lifestyle while she not only managed his household, but helped procure and arrange children for his empire. According to a Vanity Fair source, Ghislaine actually bragged about their blackmail scheme, saying that the entire island was bugged with surveillance equipment, and that she and Epstein were videotaping everyone for blackmail. Ghislaine obtained her helicopter license, and Epstein bought her a $4 million luxury helicopter. Ghislaine actually said the reason why she has a helicopter is so she could fly whoever she wants to Epstein's Island without anyone knowing. Researchers have also discovered that in addition to being a helicopter pilot, Ghislaine is also licensed to pilot submarines. Is it possible a submarine was used in Epstein's trafficking operations? Ghislaine was known for confiscating the foreign girls' passports so they couldn't leave the island. How many girls never made it off the island to tell their tales of abuse? We will never know.
If you look at the people close to Jeffrey Epstein, there's several figures that were very close to him that stand out. These include people like Ehud Barak, former Prime Minister of Israel. They were introduced by Shimon Peres, showing that Epstein socialized among these political players. And also Jeffrey Epstein had previously worked for Adnan Khashoggi. Adnan Khashoggi was involved in the Iran-Contra scandal and was known to be on the Mossad payroll at that time. Beyond that, we have Ghislaine Maxwell, who, by all accounts, was the person closest to Epstein and most involved in his affairs. Her father, Robert Maxwell, was alleged to be a Mossad operative, or at least linked to the Mossad. The ties to the mega group are really clear. And, they're often front people for oligarchs, in terms of like the structure and hierarchy of how things really work. There's people above them. And I think, honestly, the mega group is an example of that. So frankly, I think this is a network, really. I don't think Epstein was an isolated case. He wasn't just doing this to satisfy his own twisted appetites, as it were. He was doing this for power, and he admitted as much, and he also admitted, as did Ghislaine Maxwell, that they were acquiring dirt on powerful people. If it's ties to intelligence, and you look at the history of these type of operations and the people that surrounded Jeffrey Epstein, to me, it appears to be this network involving organized crime, the CIA, and elements of the Mossad. But of course, the reason that we're talking about intelligence agencies at all is the fact that the alleged reason the sweetheart deal was reached, and it has never been really talked about by anyone in the government, that Epstein was linked to intelligence, and that's why he had evaded justice for so long. Where Epstein is supposed to have acquired his money is much more of a mystery. He was supposed to have been involved in Wall Street and trading, but after all these charges came out, a lot of people on Wall Street said they'd never heard of his firm. And of course, the townhouse and all of that was given to Epstein by Leslie Wexner. Wexner originally bought this house in 1989, and he never lived in it. But after he bought it, he spent millions of dollars decorating and refurbishing the home that was later occupied by Jeffrey Epstein. And one of the things that Wexner put in this house was a rather odd bathroom that visitors described as a James Bond-like bathroom because it was lined with lead, assumably to prevent electronic surveillance. And if you open the cabinets in this bathroom, there was closed-circuit TV and recording devices and other things of that nature. So given what Epstein was known to have done in that New York residence and in other residences, it's quite interesting that he was given a house that had been fitted with this type of equipment in advance, and it was given to him for free, which to me suggests that he wasn't the billionaire that he was made out to be. It was more that he was given the appearance of having been a billionaire, and his money was coming from somewhere else. To me, it really shows that Epstein was carrying on an operation that he did not invent. This is something that did not begin and did not end with him. And he was just perpetuating this. And I think that's why it's really important to challenge some of the narratives that have come out around this case, that Epstein was solely responsible for all of this activity and that he had deceived the billionaires who funded him, and that this is all to be blamed on a single man. I think if we do that, we're really doing his victims an injustice, because this is something much larger than Epstein.
What we're looking at with Epstein are gateways to a global cesspit of paedophilia and also Satanism. It involves some of the most powerful, rich, and famous people in the world. What this ring does from its controlling core is to use paedophilia to compromise people it wants to control, be they presidents or prime ministers or anyone of political and other influence who can make decisions that this cabal wants them to make to advance its agenda. And this blackmail operation is a speciality of the Israeli intelligence operation Mossad, as it is with the CIA and British intelligence. Now, Epstein was Jewish and a Zionist and had big connections to Israeli politicians, to the military, and to the intelligence community. It also involves this web connecting to Epstein, something called the mega group, and this mega group connects us into Donald Trump, also at least one-time friend of Epstein. When you work for the ring and serve the ring will watch your back until you become a danger to the ring because of your exposure. Then one of two things happens. You're either taken out or you disappear. You might disappear through a faked death and you live out your life under another identity. And there are some people who are saying that Epstein is not dead, that this whole thing was a hoax to get him out, and so he didn't have to appear in court and all the beans might be spilled on the rich and famous. Mossad, CIA, have a stunning history of taking out people who become a problem to them. This world is nothing like we think it is. We have a cabal that is psychopathic and satanic, that is dictating world events and is dictating your life in increasingly fine detail. And we need to open our minds to it very fast, because its agenda for humanity is horrific.
Un objeto volador no identificado sale del cráter y se aleja lentamente. Asciende de forma vertical completamente. Es importante destacar que el objeto, al ascender, se observa por delante de los vapores y gases que en esos momentos está emitiendo el volcán.
Fue captado un video que expone la presencia de 6 objetos voladores no identificados que se mantenían estáticos sobre el horizonte en la campiña inglesa, el lugar donde desde hace décadas se reporta la presencia de extraordinarias formaciones en los campos de cultivo.
healers. And very, of course, tuned into all the astrological things. They could track everything. They even could track our cycle of ascension, and that's what 2012 was all about. Now that has passed, but we still are going through, you know, there's a little give and take of a few years where we're still going through this cycle. Now the most important part for me right now with the Mayans is the energy of the Mayan inner earth group. The Mayan civilization was huge, millions and millions of people. And that's where the Mayan inner earth group came from, so they actually went inner earth. When they left, it got messy. So that's where the sacrifice came in, where they're like, we must sacrifice to the gods, to the heavens, to like have these powers, to have, you know, it rain every year, to have all these different things happen. But it was skewed and went into the dark. So it was like, that's where the dark magic, the sacrifice came from, was actually these Mayans leaving.
Every ancient culture shares legends about interactions with subterranean races, no matter which continent they originate from. They say inner Earth has water, oceans, and luminosity, and that it sustains not only plants and animals, but intelligent life. According to Tibetans, Shambhala is a physical place, but one that also has an ethereal nature, given its location inside this holistic, evolving planet. True Buddhists fervently believe in this subterranean empire, which they say has millions of inhabitants and many cities, including the capital, Shambhala, where a supreme ruler dwells. They believe that they've been there for thousands of years, sheltering humanity since the terrestrial cataclysms. Earth is a spherical, spacious planetary body with enormous, continent-sized caverns deep within it, and large entrances miles across at the North and South Pole. NASA's images and videos of the poles are rare. They're hard to find. But when they are revealed, they often have cloud cover, ice cover, or questionable anomalies, like simply being blotted out. Stranger still, no planes or satellites are permitted to come within a certain distance of the poles. Well, in November 1968, a satellite photo of the North Pole was released. It showed a large polar opening in absence of cloud cover. Satellite images since then, showing serious anomalies, do raise questions, particularly the one from Russian space station Mir in 1987, showing light emanating in a very mysterious fashion. And then there are other NASA images of the planets, Venus, Jupiter, the various moons, all showing strange qualities or blotted out poles. Why do these images from space consistently have their poles concealed? Like this blotted one of Jupiter, where you can actually see light emanating from the center. No investigation of inner Earth is complete without the unique story relayed by the pioneering American aviator, Admiral Richard Byrd Jr., one of the most highly decorated officers in military history, who led numerous expeditions to both poles. He fought for the Allies in both world wars and led 2 huge military expeditions to Antarctica following World War II. He called it the land of everlasting mystery and a vast new territory not on any map. He said it was an area as big as the US, never seen by a human being. He said that he traveled 1,700 miles on this journey. And he was so surprised when ice below gave way to lush green forests, lakes, rivers, and mountains. He noted that everything had unique and inexplicable color. And suddenly he realized in shock that there were some kind of space vehicles flying beside him. They escorted him, and he saw an entire city and was safely landed despite the fact he had no control over his plane. Once there, he was graciously greeted by civilians, and they called this place Agartha. He and his crew were then taken to meet what they were told was the ruler of Agartha. They were told they'd been allowed to enter, despite these invisible barriers, because of his high moral and ethical character. The ruler went on to say that ever since the US had dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, their race had been very concerned for human safety and the survival of the planet. And Byrd was asked to share this message and warning to civilization. In closing, Byrd said he briefed the Pentagon of his message, was interviewed intently by top security forces and a medical team, and ordered to remain silent in regard to all that he learned on behalf of humanity. 10 years later, he wrote a final entry. I must state that I have faithfully kept this matter secret, as directed all these years. I've done my duty towards the monstrous military-industrial complex, and those who are of darkness shall fall in its light, for I have seen that land beyond the pole, that center of the great unknown.
When I was in school, I was taught the brain is the master organ in the body, and of course the brain's important. But now we know the brain receives the bulk of the instructions that tell the brain what to do come from the heart. And the heart creates those instructions based on our perception, how we feel about the world around us. When we have a sense of well-being and we feel safe, we send one set of signals. When we feel threatened or we're constantly being vigilant of the world, that's a very, very different chemistry that we're sending, and we do it instinctively. There are techniques that allow us to very consciously harmonize the heart and the brain when we choose to do that. And when we do that, it opens the door to tremendous potentials, including super learning, super memory, longevity enzymes are awakened. So we know about these specialized cells, neurons in the heart. They think independently of the human brain. They feel independently. They remember independently. When we have experiences in life, we register those in these neurons in our body. If they're good experiences, it's not a problem. Rarely do we find someone who is stuck in joy. You know, you don't hear people say, you know, God, I've got so much joy in my life. Can you help me out? So the joy isn't the problem, even though the joy is registered in those neurons as well. Candace Pert was the first medical doctor who linked human trauma and human emotion to these physical chemicals. They're called neuropeptides. So the word tells you the whole thing right there. Neuro is associated with the nervous system, and peptides, it's a chemical bond. When we have experiences in our lives, often at young ages, even in the womb before we're born, and we don't know how to resolve the trauma. So it's the unresolved trauma that becomes the problem. What happens is that our perceptions, our body, will create a chemistry that matches that trauma. And ideally, the chemistry wants to metabolize. It wants to move through the body, through the blood, and be metabolized through urine or perspiration, just the way other chemicals are. But if we have not resolved the trauma, then our body will store the neuropeptides in an organ and keep it for us until we have learned to resolve or to free that chemical to allow it to move forward. If you don't know that those neuropeptides are in the organs and decades pass, then they will let you know sometimes by creating what we call illness or disease. They'll show up as a condition of inflammation initially, and the inflammation, if it's not addressed, can lead to something else. It's not the hurt is bad. That's not the problem. It's unresolved hurt. So the question is, when we have these deeply traumatic experiences, and we all have them in our lives, loss of loved ones, betrayal, when someone lies to us, or infidelity. I mean, these are the most intimate relationships is where we have the deepest hurts. And we have those, where does that emotion go? If you're trying to recall those things with the mind, in the polarity, the mind and the ego and the subconscious patterning want a polarity response. They want a right or a wrong or a good or a bad. And when you look at the wrongness or the badness, that's where the hurt comes from. When we begin to access the memories from the heart that do not have that polarity, it's almost surreal. It's like you can be honest with yourself and objective about what happened without immersing yourself in the pain. And that is where these neuropeptides, they will begin to free, and of course that has external, sometimes when they're free you get a rash sometimes because they're moving quickly, obviously tears, a lot of emotion, shift in breathing. And what that means is that the hurt now has been redefined. You don't change what happened, but you change your ability to respond to what happened. I believe that we have everything that we need to transcend any experience that can come to us in this world with our own medicine cabinet and our own chemistry that we have. And when an individual is able to access this part of themselves and awaken this, and then heal what they've thought was their deepest hurt from something that's already within them, the level of confidence, the level of mastery, the level of self-esteem, knowing that you can do that, it changes the way you look at the world. And it allows us to live and love much more freely without feeling a dependence on anything, that we need something to get us through this. And it changes the way we think about ourselves in life.